Welcome, everybody. My name is Marcia Rogers. I am with Evolution. I'm the operations director. If you have not heard about Evolution, we are an innovation hub for startups. So if you are looking to grow your startup or try to figure out, is my startup feasible? How do I scale it? How do I manufacture? Those are things that we help with. We have a list of all of our mentors here. The nice thing about Evolution is Alex and Patrick and Charlie are all actual local investors here in the Sacramento area. So you're getting advice directly from a local investor. Mentorship packages, they scale anywhere from $49 up to $14.99. So there's a package that can fit every entrepreneur or startup is what we're hoping. If there's anything that you need to contact us for, you can check out our website, sign up directly for the coaching. And then I'm going to hand it over to John with FR Secure.
Well, hey, thanks for having me. And yeah, good to know on the recording and possible publishing. I'll try not to curse too much.
I can always edit.
Yeah, shouldn't be anything risque on the presentation, but we'll get after it here and see. It occurred to me, as a startup, why should you care about cybersecurity? So I wanted to offer some direction and advice on that, just some things to think about, and how to kind of balance this with the need for you to grow your business, right? I mean, it's not something that is altogether front of mind usually as you're going on this venture. It's certainly even for us as a security company, when we first got started in 2008, it wasn't something that we were, chomping at the bit to do. We just wanted to grow revenues and hire people and get on with the business. So let's get a definition here. When we talk about cybersecurity, right? That's the kind of buzzword these days. The word cyber is kind of incomplete. That by textbook definition is kind of or pertaining to computers. So this tends to get branded as an IT issue rather than like a more holistic business issue or a people issue. And so we want to bring it all in. So we call it information security at FR Secure most readily, but parlance of the industry and just kind of what's on the tip of people's tongues is cybersecurity. So we use them interchangeably, basically. But ultimately, what we're talking about is, it's when I say controls, that just means a way of doing things, or maybe it's some technology, maybe it's something that you're implementing somewhere, a policy, whatever it is, a lock on a door. But we're going to cover not just technical stuff, but also administrative stuff. So that's the policy, procedure, governance, compliance, training and awareness. This is like the people side of security. And then we have physical security. Certainly, we used to joke that it doesn't really matter how good your firewall is if I can walk in your office and steal your server. And then that actually happened to a client of ours. So we're pretty big on physical security as well, making sure that things stay physically locked up and that we're looking at those things. And then of course, all the technical stuff and making sure that all the IT elements of security are taken care of. And what are we looking to do? We're protecting from unauthorized disclosure, corruption, and loss of data. So not only do we want to keep information safe from exposure, right? We don't want it to get out there in the world, right? But we also don't want it corrupted. We don't want it to change. We want it in a state that we want it. And then we certainly don't want to just lose it forever. We don't want it deleted, right? So that's what ransomware is about, right? They encrypt all your stuff and then you got to pay them to unlock it, and if you don't, it basically is unusable, right? We don't want that. So those are the areas in which we're looking at information security. As professionals, this is the kind of stuff you need to be thinking about. So just to round out the concept of security, what it all entails. This is a pretty basic definition, but just to make sure we're all kind of singing from the same sheet of music. So why should you care about any of this? So number one, and I got to tell you that you're not in business to secure information. Everything I'm about to say, I'm going to add a disclosure, has to align with what you're doing as a company. If you can't afford to do things, if no matter how many arrogant security professionals pound on the table and get in your face about how you're not doing enough and all this other stuff, they can go fly a kite, right? You're trying to run a business, you're trying to make money, you're trying to grow, you're trying to meet your mission, you're trying to serve others, whatever your particular aim is for what you're doing. That's your priority, right? This needs to work along with that. It needs to be something that's a part of it, but not all of it. So don't let anybody tell you different. But ultimately, to fold security into what you're doing, there is an element of, ethical behavior, right? It's the right thing to do. When we get this wrong, people do get hurt. They lose money, they lose their identities. They, sometimes are physically harmed. We work with a lot of healthcare organizations, and when their systems go down, you're not going to convince me that if a hospital loses internet connection and, can't you know, monitor machines in people's rooms, that people aren't dying, their health isn't getting worse, right? So that we deal with some of that kind of stuff in our industry. Certainly there's reputational risk, there's IP you might lose to the bad guys. We had an instance where it was somebody who had a bunch of proprietary paint recipes. I guess that's a thing, you know, paint is a very like sacred thing in terms of how the colors are derived and kind of the mixtures. Well, their IP got lost to some attack overseas, and then lo and behold, a Chinese company pops up a year later and starts selling their stuff for about half the price. And then, you know, paying ransom. Every time you pay a ransom to the bad guys, when they lock your stuff down and you pay them for the keys to unlock it, they're using that money to fund more attacks. So frankly, your bad security affects me too. And so we want to make sure that's on the front of everybody's mind. Like, it's just, you know, one of those things that it's a part of doing business now. We just gotta make sure that we have it straight. And I'm not just here to tell you all the ways that you're messing up. I'll give you some good direction and kind of a likely path that you'll have to follow at some point to get your arms around this. But that's reason number one. Compliance. So this is something that if you're not running into this, you probably will. From a security perspective, this can take many, many forms. So these are some of the things that you'll run into as you grow, as you start working with, you know, large commercial clients, especially if they're enterprise like Fortune 500 companies and the like. You're going to get asked to get certification. So SOC 2, that is a process by which you implement a whole bunch of stuff, and then a CPA comes in and audits all of those things and gets you an actual piece of paper that says you're, you know, certified, you have a SOC 2 report, and that you can show your clients that. I mean, that minimum from, you know, zero to finish is probably a $50,000 to $100,000 exercise, right? So you want to be looking for that kind of stuff in contracts and RFPs and RFIs and business relationships that you're making to make sure you're not going to get saddled with that and you didn't factor it into your pricing. SIG questionnaires. So this is usually comes in the form of a spreadsheet. So this is, you know, you start doing business with, you know, whoever it is, you know, Fairview Hospital or whoever, and they send you this spreadsheet of, you know, probably 400 or 500 questions about your security, the policies you use, the technology you have, your processes, your implementation, who has access to what, why, how do you manage that? I mean, it's never ending, and it's very, very painful. And it takes a whole lot of time from somebody who knows what they're doing to be able to answer a questionnaire like that. So you're going to see those. They're called SIG questionnaires. They may call them vendor risk management questionnaires. They may call them vendor security questionnaires or vendor audits. Just be prepared. That kind of stuff is coming your way. That's also kind of the next wave of security stuff we're dealing with now in the industry, is very large companies pushing their security requirements down on smaller companies, their vendors, because you're sharing information, sharing access, or using your applications, whatever it is. They want to know that you have security practices like they do. Sometimes it can be pretty burdensome just to fill out the information to send back to them. Third-party audits, this is where they would send somebody like us out to actually in-person audit you and talk to your people, maybe talk to a managed service provider, talk to your coders, talk to, you know, whoever is in charge of this stuff. And we're going to ask them questions. We're going to run tools. We're going to, you know, verify basically that you're doing what you say you're doing and that it's enough. Sometimes these things are defined out in contractual relationships, meaning that, you know, you're required to have things like multi-factor authentication on everything. You're required to have evidence of network segmentation. You're required to have specific areas of your building where you deal with their information as opposed to everybody else's. You're supposed to have dedicated staff, people like us, or security people. I mean, like FR Secure doesn't do that directly, but security people will come in and actually show up and make sure you're doing all that stuff. Evidence disclosure requests. So this is like, hey, you know, I need to see your policy on acceptable use. I need to see your policy on your general information security policy. I need to see vulnerability scan results. I need to see that you've done a penetration test. I need to see that you've done a security risk assessment or something like that from a third party. They want to, you know, a letter from whoever did it. They want to see the executive summary results, you know, those kinds of things. Insurance requirements. I'm not sure if you guys are in the realm where you're doing cybersecurity insurance yet, but if you are, those applications are getting much more difficult, and they're putting a lot more gotchas and out clauses in there. So if you have an incident, you haven't done some of the things that you attested to on your application, they're not going to pay the claim. So, gear up for that. If you are, required either by law or through a client, like, hey, you must have cyber insurance if you're going to do business with us. And then you go to fill out the application, you don't have that stuff done, that could be a big problem for you. So just make sure that you're all straight on that. Question came in: how big of a company do I have to be before I can get audited? It doesn't matter. I've seen, true startups, 1 or 2 employees. There's not even a network really to audit, but people want to come in and poke at your code. They want to look at your office space. They want to, do all of those things. I've not seen a magic number of we get so big in revenue or size or employee count or anything like that. It's just how motivated is your client, and to what degree are they concerned about your access or what they're using of yours to run their business? How mission critical is it to them? Usually dictates that. So good question though. That's great. Keep them coming. And then there's all this, laundry list of acronyms and all this. I'm not going to go through a lot of this, but these are things you're going to run. If you write these down, or we'll send this presentation out afterwards, you kind of know. ISO, International Standards Organization, that's pretty common as a security standard. People want to know if you're in line with ISO controls or ISO certified or whatever. There's all kinds of stuff around that. NIST and IST, that's more a government thing. So if you're doing business with the government, you're going to get asked about that, especially now if you're downstream anyway from the Department of Defense or Department of Defense contractors. You're going to have to get a certification on CMMC, which is basically NIST. So again, we love acronyms in our industry, right? So just be on the lookout for this stuff. HIPAA, certainly, if you're doing anything with healthcare, that's going to cross your desk. GLBA, FFIEC, NCUA, all of that banking, credit union stuff, that's very mature. You're going to run into that if you're going to do business with any of them, or even now with the SEC and FINRA for financial advisories and broker dealers and things like that. FISMA, again, another kind of government thing that you might run into. PCI, if you're doing anything with credit card security, that's definitely a big thing. And then, it goes on and on and on. This laundry list of acronyms. Of course, we deal with them every day, but it's hard to keep straight. I'm just telling you, keep an eye out for acronyms that you don't quite understand, especially if it's under the security requirements heading, because some of these things are loaded. And, being compliant with something and have a certification in something are 2 very different things. One of them can be very, very expensive. The other one can be pretty easy. If you ever have any questions or you're running into anything, we can talk about that today, or you can reach out to me afterwards. I'll kind of walk you through it. I don't charge for any of that. We just, want to make sure that you're not agreeing to something that is going to be impossible for you. Doesn't help anybody out. All right, last one, reason number 3, money. I mean, honestly, I've seen a whole lot of companies get way too far down the road and they realize they have to undo a whole bunch of stuff and redo it because they didn't have security in mind when they were building it. So if you're building a web application, if you're building, a services organization, if you're manufacturing things, whatever it is, if you have security in mind from the jump and just take little measures, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. This doesn't need to bring everything to a halt. But if you just ask the question, what do we need to be doing from a security perspective before we take this step and before we implement that, it can save you a whole lot of headaches and time later, and frankly, spending money on people like me to come in and undo it and fix it for you. So it's always cheaper on your own terms. It's always cheaper to do when it's you that's driving it rather than somebody else requiring it of you. I'm just telling you, I got mountains of evidence that say, if you do this along the way, it costs you a few $1,000. If you wait until it's a problem, it can cost you tens of thousands. Bid and RFP requirements. Start looking at this. This is getting folded into every bid and RFP and RFI and everything out there. Anybody who's soliciting business, you're trying to win business, you got to make sure you're looking for this stuff in those documents because they're gotchas. You'll get, hey, we won our big contract. You get onboarded through procurement and all this. Hey, this is great. Everybody's high five and having champagne. And then they come back to you and go, okay, so, here's all your security requirements. We're going to send an auditor out. Please fill out this questionnaire. We need your SOC 2 report in 3 months. And you're like, what? Because you didn't pay attention when you were doing this. You just agreed that you were going to do it on some kind of time frame. And now maybe the margin in that awesome deal you just got just gets whittled down to nothing because you got to spend it on security stuff. So, pay attention to that. That's coming, and it will affect your need maybe to add a little padding into the bid or up your rates or to think about service contracts in a different way based on those requirements that your clients are asking of you. And then lastly, it can be a market differentiator. I don't like to beat this drum too much because it depends on the industry. It depends on a lot of things. But, sometimes if you engage with the right people, you get the right certifications, you get the right kind of testing done, and you can communicate that to people. It puts them at ease. It puts you to the top of the list a little bit. It makes you look a little more mature as an organization to say, hey, we did this proactively. We built a web application. We had somebody test it out. We know that the major security issues are non-existent and these things we may be working on. It adds to the lure for a lot of these companies that are getting breached and having all kinds of problems because they weren't looking at it before and now they have to. You're more likely to sidestep some of those landmines in the sales process if you have those things proactively. So the likely path. So this is what we see, and we've been doing this a long time, and it never fails. This is usually where you start, right? So you're going to do some kind of security assessment. Remember, I talked about administrative, physical, and technical controls. You're going to want to go through kind of what you got for your internal business or whatever you're building or whatever your context is, and have somebody look at that and just peek under the covers and see if there's any issues. You want to make sure that you're, always, have a plan. You're always working on the next most important thing, and that somebody objective has looked at that and told you, here's your next step. So you have that plan documented, you're working the plan, you're measuring progress, and that system, that these 4 things in a row, and then kind of, repeat and recycle, this puts you in a defensible position if something happens as well. We've gotten past the point where ignorance is a defense, right? They're not allowing that anymore. Hey, I didn't know, right? That doesn't work anymore. Everybody's like, well, you should know. Do you not see the news? There's a legal precedent, there's court cases, there's all kinds of things that's no longer working, right? But what everybody now kind of agrees is that you can't stop all attacks. You can't prevent all issues from happening. It's not reasonable to expect those things from anybody or any organization. So what you're left with is that you are making progress, right? So if you find your baseline, get that assessment, where are you at, where you need to be, how long is it going to take, and how much is it going to cost to get where I want to be, and can I show that documented progress? So if something happens, you can show that and say, hey, we were working on it. We obviously can't fix everything overnight. We were working on the most important issues, and we just took one on the chin. Happens. Everybody gets that. That tends to stand up in court. It tends to stand up in client reviews. We've seen a lot of evidence and we've stood in front of a lot of our clients, both with the government and with their major clients, and articulated this. Everybody seems to be fine with that. So this is likely what you're going to go through, whether you're pursuing a certification, whether you're doing it. They're always going to start with a gap analysis or an assessment of some kind. They're going to give you a plan, a laundry list of things to do. You're going to have to work on that and then track your progress along the way. So pretty simple, but depending on the context, it can be more or less painful, depending on what you have to go after. Other stuff you might have to do is commonly required. This is just things that we see. Policies. I know that's a dirty word. There's only 10 people on planet Earth who actually enjoy writing security policies, and they all work at FR Secure. I found it. Right. So if that's something that scares you, or you just don't want to do, don't go Google these things and just put your logo on them anymore. That's a terrible idea. I got some resources for you at the end here that'll help you with that. But you're gonna have to show some policies. You're gonna have to have a general information security policy. You're gonna have to have an incident response plan, business continuity plan, disaster recovery plan. You're gonna have to have acceptable use policies. You're gonna have to have onboarding and offboarding procedures. There's all these things, and you don't need 50 policies. You probably need 5 to 10, and they should be written like dictionaries, not novels. This isn't a step-by-step procedural SOP. This can be very, very simple. It's just defining the rules on the road. Who's responsible for what, and what's their role in that? How often do we look at things? It's pretty simple stuff. You just got to have it documented, because you might get asked about it and you might have to come up with it. And doing this last minute is a chore. It's a nightmare. It sucks. You don't want to do this last minute. You want to have it together. Penetration testing. This is going a little above and beyond the assessment method, right? This is actually paying people to, it's everything from, let's do some technical testing and just take it a little further. Maybe let's validate, let's have somebody who knows what they're doing, see if what's vulnerable is actually vulnerable to attack, all the way up to attack simulation, where you're just paying people like us to just come after you guns blazing and see what we can get. But pen testing, they can require for your network. So where's your stuff sitting? So if you're building a software application or you have a bunch of IP that's sitting on a server or a network or a cloud environment somewhere, they want that tested. If it's a web application, there's stuff actually within the code, within how that web application and the inputs function and the web services to the backend web server that can be tested and need to be tested to make sure that we can't break the application or log in as a user and escalate to admin rights and then start stealing everybody's data. Physical pen testing, especially if you have a plant, especially if you have a lot of physical assets, if you have a manufacturing floor and there's a lot of sensitive stuff going on there, you might have somebody to see, how easy it is it to get into the building and physically steal things or plug things in or unplug things, right? That's another way that can be done. And then social engineering, this is attacking people. So this is sending phishing emails, seeing if they'll click on things or open attachments, making phone calls, trying to talk them out of information, showing up and maybe dropping USB drives near your office or something, see if anybody to pick it up and plug it in, all of that stuff. Social engineering is still by far the most frequently successful way that we see attacks perpetrated. That's where they start because it's a heck of a lot easier to go through one of your employees than it is to go through your firewall. So why would I spend 20 hours and $10,000 in tools and a hash cracking rig trying to break through something that is technically configured when I can just pick up the phone and talk somebody out of a password, right? So it's still the number one way. It still works. Multi-factor authentication, especially with President Biden's executive order on cybersecurity. This was something that was kind of a centerpiece of that. This is, if you don't know what multi-factor authentication is, right now you have authentication, just log in. When you think of that, like your username and password, that's a way of authenticating. What they want to do is have not just that, but something else as well. So a text that comes to your phone that has a code that you have to enter in addition to your password, or maybe it's a thumbprint or a handprint, maybe it's an eye scan, something like that. So they want multiple ways that you're logging into things, not just one, not just a password. Because those can be, depending on the password, depending on the system, can be vulnerable. So they want to make sure that you have to have whoever registered has the phone, they have the Google Authenticator, they have the text, and can get that. And they want to make sure that's on all critical systems, or maybe all systems, or email, everything. So be prepared for that. And then SIM and SOC. So these are tools. If you have a network, some of you may not. You may be working on a couple of laptops and there is no business network to speak of, but if you do have one, they may want tools and things running on there real time, looking at all the traffic, seeing if there's anomalies, alerting you if there's something amiss, and doing all of that, making sure the bad guys aren't running around in your network. We've now seen some requirements that are if you don't have those kinds of things running on your network, you may not win the business. So those are things that we're seeing most commonly. I would guess the SIM SOC is pretty new in terms of a requirement, but we are seeing it. So I wanted to mention it. The others are pretty common. So gear up for those. Okay, so what now? Keep your eyes open for opportunities. If you have sales and marketing folks, or if you are the sales and marketing folks, know what to look for when you're looking at opportunities. Know what questions to ask your clients and prospects without poking the bear. Right? Don't ask questions that are going to put you in a bad position. Like, hey, do you guys require penetration testing? And they're like, yeah, that's a good idea. Why don't you do that? Like, you don't want to do that. But, asking them, just say, hey, we just want to be prepared. We're wondering, in your MSA or, in our contract language, we saw this reference to adhering to security standards. Can you tell us more about that? Looking for those SOC 2 things, those ISO things, those NIST things, CMMC, GLBA, like whatever it is, ask questions about that. What does that mean? What are other vendors typically doing? Is what I'm doing enough? Is that something I even want to go do? Is it going to be just prohibitively expensive? And I really don't want to work with the federal government because all these security requirements just suck and it's not something I want to get involved in. Just knowing kind of what to look for and give me a call if you have any questions. I'll help you through that. Get an assessment done, right? I can't tell you where to go unless I know where you are. And this used to be a hugely expensive and horrible thing to go through to get a worthwhile security assessment that covers all the things it's supposed to and tells you how much you should care about certain things. And that's changed dramatically. And I'll give you a line on how to even get that done for free. And then start developing your policies. Again, I got a couple of resources for some free policies, policy books, things like that. at least get you started. But that's a good thing to kind of keep an eye on. Start with your information security policy, which will define roles and responsibilities and kind of set the tone for, your risk tolerance and help you think about some of these things that you may be thinking about, and then just build from there. So I'm sorry, I've been talking a lot in a row. You guys have any questions? Anything come off mute? You can put something in the chat. Anything I can clarify? Anything you're going through personally that you want me to weigh in on?
John, I have a question.
Sure.
What do you think about having a cyber liability insurance as a backup? Does it usually works?
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about that. Cyber liability insurance is changing very quickly right now. So for a long time, the insurance industry, because they were wanting to write as many policies as they could, right? But they don't have all the information behind that, all the actuarial stuff like they do for property damage or car wrecks or whatever else they use. They were kind of flying by the seat of their pants and writing a bunch of policies out and just getting as much premium as they could. And then, of course, all these breaches started happening. They got bit. They paid out a lot of money they weren't expecting to. So now they're fixing their problem. Cyber liability insurance used to be kind of a stand-in for an incident response plan, and it no longer is, and I'll tell you why. About a year ago, the FBI determined that if you get ransomware and the ransomware can be tied to a terrorist organization, you can't pay it because you're funding terrorism. That changed the game for everybody. Now these insurance companies that used to just pay the bad guys off so we could all get back to work, they can't anymore. And they're adding to that list like crazy. So what we're advising clients to do, depending on your situation, right, is to use cyber insurance as disaster insurance, right? So if all is lost and there's just, a major claim coming, you're going to have a high deductible, but, ultimately it's a backstop to the backstop. I would plan on self-insuring for incidents up to about $50,000 out of pocket is what an average incident costs kind of in our universe for companies your size. If the bad guys get you and you're totally pwned and there's just no way out, that's what it's going to cost you to get back to business. If it gets any worse than that, if it affects your clients, if it's litigation, if there's, those kinds of things, that's more what you want insurance for. So I would not rely on cyber insurance the way I would have maybe a year and a half ago, because it's changed so much. So still get it, but don't pay a lot for it. The terms are getting worse, the deductibles are getting higher, and the prices of the policies are getting out of hand.
Got it. Thank you, John.
Yeah, you bet. Anybody else? All right. So resources for you, some free, some not. So Security Studio is a company. So FR Secure have been around for a long time, right? And we saw this demand spike for a number of reasons for those security risk assessments that everybody needed. And we started building software to just automate internal processes. And then we realized at some point that it was, just didn't belong to us anymore, that the industry kind of needed this. And so we gave it away. We started Security Studio. And now anybody who wants to do an assessment, the same exact assessment that you would get from a consultant at FR Secure, you can get it through Security Studio. I think their admin licenses are running in the neighborhood of like $500 a month, but they do have a free trial and they have 3 levels of assessment. For you, just start with the L1 assessment. It's like 100 questions. It'll put everything on the scale of a credit score. It's easy to understand. It'll tell you what you need to prioritize, give you some good reports to spit out, and you can work from those. So if you get the free trial, I think it's like a 2-week trial. Don't tell them I told you this because they get mad at me, but you can get the 2-week trial, power through it maybe in a day or two, and then, just don't continue the subscription until you're ready to, take it to the next level 2 or level 3. So, that's a good way to kind of get started with an assessment for nothing. It won't cost you your time, but ultimately, if it's important to you to have a security expert to work with during that assessment process, or you want exposure them, that's when you would work with somebody like us at FR Secure, because that's the kind of people we're going to send you. But I'm telling you, this is plain English. Every question is yes, no, or not applicable. There's a lot of explainer content. Just go do the free trial and then drop it and use the information for as long as you can until you have to start using third-party assessments. Our website, FR Secure, we have free policy templates. So if you just search for, whatever policy you're looking for, or for search for information security policies. They'll pull up, they're great templates. Again, they're written like dictionaries, not novels. They're usually a handful of pages. There's also associated procedure documents, which I wouldn't get into unless you're all the way through some of those policies, but they're free. Just go get them, use them, whatever you need to do there. They're very well written, and we use them for our commercial clients when we do formal engagements. And if you don't want to write policies and you want us to do it for you, it's usually like $5 to $10 grand, depending on what you need. We can come in and round them out and get them done for you. IR risk registration. So we have an incident response team, and they are onboarding customers in a way that basically gets our contractual relationship in place. They give you some advice. They get to know kind of who you are and what your business is and everything. It's free. And there's no retainer hours to buy or anything like that. What we're trying to do is measure when these huge incidents happen, how many people are going to call us. So you can always call us out of the blue. It's a little more expensive, but you can call us out of the blue and say, hey, I got ransom. I can't work. I don't know what's going on. Can you help me? We have a whole team of people working 24/7 to do that, but there's no SLA. If it's a major breach, you can maybe a week before we can get to you, just depending on volume. And we do have people on retainer that we have to service first, but at least you can get in the system. At least we can, you can have access to some of those people you can ask a few questions for, and you can, get direct access to an incident response team when you need it. And again, it costs you nothing. If you want that, just go to frsecure.com. Go to our incident response page, fill out a little form, they'll get you set right up. We also have buyer's guides if you need technologies, if you want to read an article about something. Again, we have no stake in that game. We don't sell any hardware, software, we don't represent anything. So when we review those kinds of things and tell you about them, it's totally objective. We don't partner with those manufacturers, they don't give us kickbacks, nothing. So all kinds of stuff around that. If you are at a position where you need to hey, I need a lift here. I need to get the security stuff implemented. I just signed a big contract. I got requirements, you're heading down that path. There is this concept of virtual CISO, so virtual chief information security officer. It is a thing. They do exist. It's probably our biggest practice. We're kind of known for it, but this is somebody that fills that gap for you. There's a few different types of fractional CISOs tend to be kind of by the hour. You just buy a block of hours, but security person, we don't do that particular brand of it, but you can always find independent security experts out there that'll give you some time and help you with some things. Consultative, this is more programmatic. You sign a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year contract, and we just kind of slowly but surely do assessments and kind of help you through and start building all this stuff out with you and making sure that we're making the progress that we need to. Then there's contracts. So if you just hey, I need somebody full-time for a month or two just to get the stuff knocked out, there's people out there that do that too. Whatever you're looking for, if any of that rings a bell and you want to talk more about it, just let me know. Some of it we do, some of it we know people who do it and can hook you up, whatever you need there. So what questions do you have? How can I help?
I did have a few in the chat.
Okay.
One was, what's the difference between manufacturing startups, SaaS, consumer packaged goods, when it comes to information security that I should be looking for?
So if you're more in the manufacturing space, packaging space, that kind of thing, how is that different?
Right.
Yeah, I think it's going to start with the what are you afraid of losing, right? So there's always an exercise you need to go through as an organization to say look, if what's the nightmare scenario? So for a software company, usually it's things like my code got breached or it got attacked or people can't log into my application or whatever it is. For manufacturers, it's usually time loss. So if your machines are network connected or they're required to have computers running in order to operate, those kinds of things, it's how much does it cost you an hour or 2 hours or a day to be out? And a cyber attack can definitely impact that. So you want to kind of measure to what degree do you really need to worry about it. Frankly, we work with a company that make tractor implement they manufacture tractor implements. And, it's a bunch of guys in a, metal stamping and welding shop that, there's a lot of manual processes. These are custom kind of things. And they don't have many needs, right? They're not going to spend a lot on security. They're not going to care, but we're still doing assessments for them. We're still helping them figure that out. They have some insurance requirements and things because they work with some large companies you would have heard of, but honestly, it's not that different of a process. It's still just figure out where you're at and kind of what's the appropriate level of security for you. You're going to be a lot more concerned with physical access to your building when you're not there. Maybe surveillance is more of a thing for you than it is other people. Certainly looking at anywhere you have network connected machines, those packaging machines, the balers, anything that runs on a network connection requires internet to function. Or requires a computer to function. You're going to want to make sure that network that they sit on is kind of segmented and secured from everything else. So if somebody in accounting messes up and clicks on an email, it doesn't lead to shutting down your entire production floor. It's those kinds of things. So it starts to get a little nuanced, but ultimately it kind of starts with working with somebody who knows what they're doing and helping you understand where those little, bugaboos are and how to fix them.
Great answer. Heath has a question in the chat. Are you able to see that one?
Is this the one with us not being a vendor or supplier MSP?
Yes.
Yeah. So how do I suggest somebody finds the right solutions for MFA, SIM, et cetera? We have a number of suppliers and MSPs that we work with that we like, where they treat our customers well. We have vetted them out, personally. Some specialize in certain types of businesses, some, are more generalist. It depends on where you are sometimes geographically. So if you need a recommendation on that, you're just kind of like, yeah, I kind of know an IT guy who helps me with my website every now and then, but I really need to work with somebody who can help me implement some of this other stuff. Hit me up, give me some information on what you're doing, or you can do it right now. I can, rattle off a couple of MSPs or, people that I know that could help you
out. Would you suggest looking on LinkedIn? Do you find LinkedIn to be of value when looking for individuals in this space?
Yeah, I always say that the best MSP or the best IT company or the best supplier is always going to be one that you're recommended by somebody who knows what they're doing or uses them, right?
Okay.
You're going to find people who are really good at marketing on LinkedIn, and good for them. That's fine. We do the same, right? But ultimately ask around, right? You're going to have people who, do this, do it well, do it in your space, talk to other people in your industry or at a conference or something like that. That's a good way to find them. Word of mouth is still kind of king in that arena.
Gotcha. And then Heath answered again, I'm a MFA provider looking at how you vet solutions.
Yeah. So when we vet solutions, there's kind of two ways we do it. Number one, if you're implemented at any of our clients or somebody that we know, we'll kind of talk about their experience, what your capabilities are, what your business processes are like, right? Because customer experience adoption is sometimes a barrier to good security. So we just want to know how you operate. But we also have a technical team that, depending on, it's not binary, right? It's not like, are you a good MFA solution provider or not? It's what are you claiming to be able to provide, and can we verify that your solution actually does that? Will you give us kind of the keys to go look at those things and see, how it functions? Will you spend some time with our technical resources walking us through how it works, and then, kind of help improve it out? So if you're looking for some validation that your solution is legit, we can help you out with that. But if you're also looking to just, partner and, hey, how can I work with more of your clients who I know have this thing, we do have programs for that as well. If you want to be onboarded as a partner of ours, that we, just know enough about you that when our VCSOs or our tech team are out in the field and somebody says, hey, I need MFA, who do you know? Like, we're not going to take your money or, anything like that for a referral fee, but we can say like, hey, we know these guys, they're good. They're, at these other clients, they tend to work pretty well in this type of environment. Give them a call. That's how it works.
Great.
Any other questions? All right. Well, if anything else comes up, I'll keep the chat window open in case something does come up, but I will give you my email address here. I'm on FR Secures on Twitter. I was gonna say, I don't think I'm on Twitter still, but anyway, that's my email address. That's my direct email address. I'm pretty good at email, usually within a day or so. You feel free to give me, shoot me an email, get in touch. I'll happy to talk about any of this kind of stuff. I don't personally charge for my time or services or anything like that. So don't feel like you're getting anything, you're not gonna be sent a bill. I'm not a lawyer. No offense to anybody that's on the call, but before we go, I'll tell you a couple of cool hacker stories. If you guys want to stick around for that, we got time.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. So I mentioned, part of what we do as a company is we're paid by companies to attack them. They want to, they think their security is, maybe it's as good as they think it needs to be, or maybe they just want to put some things to the test, whatever the case is. They give us an objective and say, how would you go about achieving this objective? So one time we were hired by as a company downtown Minneapolis. They're in one of those tall buildings, with secure elevators. And in fact, this company occupied the entire floor. So you get out the elevator and the first thing you see is a desk, a reception desk with a guard. And then you have like the turnstile doors with the badge access and all these cameras everywhere. And their basic their ask was basically like, can you get in? Right? Can you get in our office and cause any kind of problem for us? Is our physical security working the way it's supposed to? And so part of our process, and this is nothing abnormal for people like us, is that we do a lot of reconnaissance. Right? We go out on the internet, find out all your dirty laundry. We want to know who built the system, what kind of gear do you have, who is this guard, who works there, what's your company like, how big is it, what do you guys do? We just want to know everything that we can. And we learned a couple of things in that process. Number one, it was a small enough company where we knew we probably didn't want to try to do this during business hours, right? Somebody would look at us and be like, hey, who are you? You don't work here. I've never seen you before, right? They'd find us out. And the other thing we knew is that we couldn't fake access. We couldn't like clone a badge, right? The system didn't work that way. It was too risky. It, just wasn't going to work. But we did find out that a lot of the IT team have a bowling league or a bowling team or something that they do on Thursday nights. And we love having IT people's access because they work all hours. They usually have access to things. They got to upgrade things when everybody's not at their desk, right? So we like that. And it also, so it doesn't throw up any red flags if they're there after hours, but they also have access to everything, right? So every door will open for the IT person. So anyway, we, figured out where they go bowling. We picked a couple of them out. We followed them to the bowling alley. How it goes. You take off your jacket, you put it on the chair, you go get your shoes and your ball. Well, what's on the jacket? A badge, right? So we pick up the badge, go to the office, which is about 20 minutes away, and walk in, badge right in, we went into everybody's office, all the executives' offices, we went to the server rooms, we went into janitor's closets, we relocated some stuff, messed with people's chair settings, turned monitors upside down, just generally kind of did some stuff. And we were there maybe 20 minutes, and then we left and went back to the bowling alley, and we returned the badge. So nobody even knew it was missing. So the next day we said, hey, check the cameras, check this badge number between this time and that time. That was us. That was us that made we're in your office. So they were like, oh man, I can't believe that. And, everything. So, we can't just like point out problems and wish people luck, right? You got to give them some recommendations. So what we told them was, number one, you got to tell your people not to leave their badge around. Right. And it turns out the guy that left the badge was pretty new and he just hadn't been through a lot of that training yet. So we suggested that they move their, don't lose your badge training to onboarding. So don't wait for like a quarterly training, just do it right away when somebody gets hired and then reinforce it at some regular interval. The other thing was, after hours, you got the guard sitting there and the traffic's pretty light. Why not just have the guard verify the badge? Even if they know you, even if you see you every day, you never know when somebody gets terminated or loses their job and comes back in and wants to wreak havoc. So just verify, right? So it's a pretty simple thing to go up to the guard and say, it's after 6 o'clock. I need to get in. Here's my badge. And they check it. Okay, yeah, go on ahead. The third thing was they had this very sophisticated access control system and all these badge readers and everything. And we must open 10 doors in 20 minutes. It's like, where's the fire, right? Like there was no alerting set up to say this is a regular activity and to have somebody go check on. You know, if we had opened that many doors, we were sprinting around the office, and for what? Is there a fire? What's happening? Send the guard back, alert the guard, and send them back there to see what's going on. So those were the three things that we recommended. We got a couple minutes left. I'll tell you about the time the police helped us carry out an attack. This was kind of back in the early days. Our founder, Evan, who's a brilliant social engineer and does a lot of this kind of work. We were hired by a big pharmaceutical company in the Twin Cities here, and they were worried about information leaking, right? They just wanted to, you know, see if there was anything that they needed to be concerned about. If somebody was going to make a problem for them, how would they do it? Where would this information go? Who would be leaking it? And so, you know, we commenced the attack, and part of the process and that kind of thing is that is to dumpster dive, right? So it's amazing what people throw away, especially when companies throw away documents and information on what systems they're using, maybe lists of passwords anyway, staff, you know, phone numbers, email addresses, all kinds of stuff. So, you know, it's 3 o'clock in the morning and Evan's, you know, in a dumpster pulling out boxes of documents, and the police showed up, you know, so it's very large, very armed, you know, very uniformed police officer. He kind of shines a light on him and says, "Hey man, what are you doing? Get out of there." So I was like, "Oh, busted," you know, and starts walking over there. Well, I'm going to call a timeout and tell you right now that when social engineers are on the job, they carry this thing. It's called an engagement letter. So it's a letter from the client that basically says, "Hey, don't take this person to jail. They're supposed to be here. This is what they're doing for us. Call us if you have any questions." But as a social engineer, you don't want to give that letter out because it's kind of an admission of failure. So Evan, because he has a screw loose, carries 2 letters. One's real and one's fake. The fake one calls back to our office, not the client. So, you know, you're Evan, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. You just got told to get out of a dumpster by a police officer, and you have a decision to make. You can either show him the real letter or you can show him the fake letter. Now, there's no showing them the fake letter and it doesn't work out. And you're like, "Ah, just kidding. Here's the real letter." Like, you're going to jail. Now, we'll bail them out in the morning, but, you know, ultimately nobody wants to go through all that. So anyway, of course, Evan gives them the fake letter. Officer reads it, calls the number. We had somebody waiting for the call just in case. And they picked up the phone and said, "Yeah, you know, he's a security professional. We're just trying to see if there's anything that, you know, may be problematic in terms of our data leaking. Actually, you know, we really don't want him seen, and people are going to start showing up here soon. If you can help him get out of there a little faster, that'd be great. Thanks very much." And, you know, the officer hung up the phone and then started carrying boxes of the truck for us. So it was, he was a great sport about it, by the way. We sent him a fruit basket and, you know, gave our apologies and everything. But, you know, it's just amazing how, you know, that kind of confidence that, you know, just the acting like you're supposed to be there and creating that narrative, creating that, that putting people at ease, you know, those kinds of things really work sometimes to get out of trouble or to get what you need as social engineers. It definitely works.
Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. That was fantastic. Some really good information delivered in a very clear and easy way to understand.